Hello folks, before we dive in, I just wanted to let you know about the Notion Made Simple course. You can get it below and it is a growing library of Notion content. Anyway guys, let's dive into today's video. Hello everyone, welcome back to the Keep Productive YouTube channel. It is Francesco here, and in today's video we're very lucky to be joined by Adam Listek, who is a web developer. He's also works very, very hard on Adam Listek, listekconsulting.com, which is his consulting business. Adam, it's great to have you.
Thanks for having me. Really looking forward to talking about formulas and that kind of thing.
Yeah. So today's video, guys, is all about Notion formulas. This is something that, whenever I look at it, I don't know about whether you've interacted with people like this as well. Whenever I look at formulas, it scares me.
Well, it shouldn't be scary, but it is different. It can be different for sure.
Yeah, that's it. And Adam has put together a Notion page, and that's where I discovered him from, which I'll include in the link in the description. And it's a great page if you're looking to learn. But today we're going to talk about a few examples and use cases. But first, Adam, maybe you can fill in a few of the gaps of things I missed in your introduction there.
Sure. So my name's Adam Listek. I've been a web developer and in technology for 15 years or now. So now it's been a while. But I not only do development, that kind of thing, but I work for a university as well, and so I do a lot of my day-to-day is a lot of tech. But it's one of those things where I've done a lot of WordPress development, other random projects here and there. But yeah, I've been using Notion for pretty much forever at this point. And so it's once formulas came out, it really opened up a kind of a new world of things you can do with it. That is kind of one of those things where, hey, now you've gone from a regular old wiki style setup to having a bit more database and, really being able to extend it. So yeah, I've been fortunate to be able to create that formula guide, and it seems like it's been helpful. So yeah, looking forward to showing some examples and chatting more through this.
Yeah, definitely. From what I hear, it's been really helpful, and it's obviously ranking really well on Google, which is helping a lot of people, which is good news.
I did not expect that, by the way. I was
accidental.
I was like, oh, hey, here's this one little page, and I can't remember where I shared it from, but it seems like it's become at least somewhat useful and more popular.
Yeah, definitely. And my first sort of question would be around how you're currently using Notion. Sure. What are the sort of main use cases that you take advantage of it for?
Well, it's evolved over time. I've realized I had to look back. I've actually been using Notion before it was 1.0. I found it when I started using it back right when it went beta in I want to say around September of 2015. So I've been using Notion for essentially the entire product. And over that time, I've kind of changed to, wiki style, kind of just combine information. And I moved from Evernote to that. And so I dumped all of my 2000 notes or whatever it was into Notion, and it's really just a way to manage projects that I'm doing, a bunch of notes, a couple different things like with formulas and that kind of stuff in particular. When the databases, once upon a time, I did a podcast, and so I did all my episodes in there and did some calculated fields, things that were useful at the time that kind of help. I found recently that personally, I don't use the databases quite as much for a lot of calculations. I just don't have the need of it. I track a lot of information, but of course I've done a lot of it helping others. And for me, I do a lot of just project management, tracking of code examples, things that are useful. My billions of bookmarks at this point, so just whatever, whole lot of life.
I can imagine the running the business aspect is all sort of inside of there. And how do you use formulas then?
So it's tough because I personally, I see a lot of folks doing like trackers or needing to do calculation stuff. I really use it primarily at this point I do a lot of article writing. And so with that to track like due dates and track the amounts and processes and where it's in the, like a pipeline is kind of where I use those formulas mostly for, to kind of keep track, make sure that I'm staying on top of things. As I have a great tendency to do is like, I'll get it done. It just might be last second. And so, it's trying to stay on top of that and using what I can out of Notion's formulas to at least have some idea that, it's coming up. I gotta work on it,
Yeah, but it's urgent.
Yeah, it's urgent. Don't forget.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, maybe it's time to jump into a few examples. Obviously, like, this is probably really beneficial for the community because this is a big pain point at the moment. So, take it away with a few of it, because you've handpicked a couple.
Yeah. Well, okay. And as I was, I'm thinking of what's a good way to kind of describe this. So I figured we'll run through like an idea of a daily tracker, just kind of show a couple hopefully relevant examples that make sense. So the first thing we do is we need to make a database, and so we'll start here. We're not going to do anything too crazy, but we'll kind of set this up. So as I was kind of trying to think of things we want to do is, I was thinking that what if you want to check, you want to try to do a couple things, like what if you want to check on a couple properties? So in this case, we want to say we want to check on the kids' homework, but we want to know if we've done that for a day. Well, oftentimes in a multi-select field, we'll have a couple values here. And what we want to do is, if we make a lovely checkbox, and so this is an example that I use often. And so what I'm going to do is kind of describe what this is here. All right. So what this kind of example is, as we kind of take a look at what we're doing. So one of the cool things that you might notice already is that, you can use these, emojis in there, which gives you kind of the ability to do a little bit more with it in terms of just, symbols and things. So you don't always have to just rely on plain text. But one of the things that I think folks struggle with is, when you're talking about like an if command, what if then else kind of thing, what are you doing with it? And although this may look long and complicated, this is one that a number of folks have seemed to be interested in, and it's really where I'm saying, hey, if there's a condition, in this case, I want to say if one is greater than 0, do something, so true or false. So at a very simple start, it kind of you're seeing that you're doing this condition, and then what happens if it's true and what happens false. So within this one in particular, even though, or to unwrap it a bit, this is pretty much the core of what's happening here. This replace all. And so what that does is it actually runs something called regex. And what that is saying, hey, look at this text string and then do something with it. And what I think a lot of folks don't know is that the multi-select field, it's actually a comma separated field. So behind the scenes here, it's like Joe, Sally, Sherry. So what's kind of cool about this is that by saying, hey, with this little command here, this thing is saying replace all the words or all the letters that are not comma. So what we actually end up with here, and you can actually see this, is if you do this, and I just say, if all I'm doing is replacing all on there, you'll notice that there are just 2 commas there. It's removed all of the words. So by saying, hey, what's the length of this? Well, the length is 2. So I know that by doing it this way, I can say there are 2 commas there. So I already know that I'm separating 3 values. So when I add the additional 1, I get the number of values in the multi-select, which is super handy, because once you have that, then you can do various calculations to say, okay, well, in this case, if I have 3 values, which I know is everyone, if I have everyone there, then hey, let's output this checkbox because I've checked everyone's homework. If not, then hey, let's do this little X here to say I have not. So you can see this as if I remove one of these, well, now I haven't checked them. And it's one of those kind of things where as you're looking at it and trying to decide what you want to do, it can be very useful to say, well, shoot, let's take a look at this and see if I've done all of the things in a task or not. This first part here is also basically just saying, if the length of it is 0, if I don't have anything checked, then make sure to output the X. Otherwise, sometimes what you'll see is it won't always show. You'll just kind of get like an infinity or a blank value, and it's not exactly what you want to see. You want to see like a true false. So that's one of those things where depending on what you're trying to do can be very useful. So let's get rid of this one. And then, another very common task is I have a series of, to-dos. What's kind of cool is, if you use, let's say I want to check my workouts, and I'm going to make this a checkbox. Every day I'm going to see, am I doing a workout? Am I reading a book? Or reading a book? Reading many books, whatever did I do? Hopefully more than one. And then
not in a day, though.
No. Well, depends. I don't know how fast of a reader are you.
Not very fast at all.
Yeah. Me neither some days. All right. Well, if I can type here, let's try that. All right. So if we're doing this, we're making this a checkbox. So cool. I've got 3 checkboxes. And what if I had the idea of I wanted to kind of measure my productivity in a day. So maybe I'll assign a different point value, arbitrarily so, to each one of these. Maybe 3 for working out, maybe 2 for books, maybe 1 for, reading emails is really what that was supposed to be. And so I kind of want to say, all right, well, if I'm going to do that, I'm going to have a measure of what I'm doing here. And so let's make I'm going to call it task point value. I know, super descriptive. Yeah. And so breaking this down as to just demo, you can see, hey, look. So now I've got, 3 for my working out, 2 for here, ultimately there. And obviously I just picked these values at random. But the idea is with checkboxes, you can actually set it to 2 number. And so what that does is basically saying if it's checked or not, it's either 1 or 0. If it's checked, it's 1. If it's not, 0, which means that you can now use it to compare stuff. So it's one of those super useful little tricks is when you have a checkbox, you can then convert it numerically, and then you're able to evaluate. And as you can see, my little prop here, which is saying reference that workout, I've used the emoji within that so that it works, which is actually when I first did that, I was like kind of amazed that that's how it all tied together, but so I'm just saying, hey, if it's 1, if it's equal to 1, then assign 3, otherwise 0. And then I'm just adding at this point. So all I'm doing is saying if the books, make it 2, if the reading emails, make it 1, and then you just get the added value. And at this point, if all 3 are checked, you get 6. Otherwise, you can go. So it's kind of cool because you can decide like, hey, I want to track these kind of things. I want to assign some value. You can do even more so with, if you have a whole lot of stuff, especially if you're doing like weighted averages and that kind of thing. Then, when you get more into the math, depending on what you're trying to track, it can be pretty useful to say a series of checkboxes and different values for each one.
I mean, I can, like, for me, I'm going to be taking this away because I actually have like a habit tracker, and I've only just started using it, and I'm like, so what I've done now is at the bottom of the table is I've only done count percentage checked as a way to sort of value that. But if I'm able to give myself a scoring system like this,
Yeah.
then I'm able to actually go, I get a
Yeah.
point score at the end of the day, and I can give different weighting for each of the different things I do. So that's amazing.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was thinking was like your measure of productivity, right?
Yeah,
Granted,
sick.
it's arbitrary and it can be whatever you want, but if you value, say, working out more, then great. Assign a higher value, and then I could say, well, shoot, I didn't do much today, or I rocked it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I
sick.
always kind of thought perfect for that daily tracker, or habit tracker, kind of whatever
Yeah, that's great.
trying
That's
to
a
do.
great idea.
And then I was, as I was kind of thinking like, okay, well, what if we wanted to do much like you're saying, like a percentage checked, that kind of thing? Well, taking this a little bit to kind of numerically decide what we want to do. Let's do the kind of same thing where we're doing check boxes here, but we want to track laundry.
Yep.
Because why not every single day? Especially with kids, it
Dedication.
sure feels that way. And then we want to, check the mail. I know it's super exciting. And then we'll say clean with my broom. Half the fun was just finding these icons to say.
It certainly is.
What's the best? Although I have recently started doing this where it's been using the icons for the column names, just because it keeps it a little bit more concise in some ways. Obviously, you have to know what they actually mean, but yeah.
Once you set yourself a few rules, it's fine.
Exactly, right. It's just making sure you set the rules.
Yeah.
All right, so let's take some chores here and kind of show you first what the end result here is. And granted, these are not perfect because, as you'll see, without anything checked, I still see a little percentage sign. But as I start to check things, you'll notice I can get percentage on there. So it's somewhat the same idea, where I'm taking the 2 number, I'm taking that checkbox and saying, hey, convert that to a number, and let's then add them all together. So in this case, it would be 1 + 2 + 3, so I get the 3 there. But then one of the things that to get a percentage in particular, I want to round it. So instead of, if I add 2 together, one of the things that Notion does is, without doing that, it will be like 33.33333 repeating. It's not the nicest looking of things. And so you can even see that if I take out that round there, let's see, make sure I match everything. Hey, that's a whole lot of 3s.
Yes, it is.
So it's not not the easiest to read. So rounding is useful, but then I do a little bit of math here, and so I'm taking 100 divided by 3. So, and in this case, it's obviously not going to expand to cover any checkbox you add there. You have to manually kind of change the numbers to match what you want. But I'm saying take like 3 times, whatever increments I've to divide my 100% by. And so 3 times 33.33 will get me 100. And then finally, this format thing. So one of the things I found is that, yes, it would be ideal to, if for example, I'll show you in a number field, you can use this little formatting, feature here. Super useful. Depending on what you're doing, percentage, great. For whatever reason, percentage often does kind of wonky stuff. So when I'd use with formulas, and I'm sure there are better ways, how to do this, but oftentimes I'll set a value and then it will end up be like 33,000%. And it's not translating quite the way I want. So to kind of hack around that, by taking a number and then dumping it to this format function, it will turn it into a string. At that point, I can then take the percentage, just add on a percent. So all this is doing is saying, hey, I am now 33 as a string plus the percentage. So I still kind of get what I want, which is also why you see this lonely trailing percentage here, because without like an if command to say, if this is more than 0, then show it. But it kind of gives you the idea of like, well, 1, how do I do a bit of math here? And then 2, how do I concatenate strings? How do I convert numbers to strings and then, do whatever I want? Because I've used this type of example not only for this kind of thing, but also in date ranges. There was somebody that wanted a one where it was like 4 years, comma 2 months, comma 3 days, and you can't really natively get that kind of setup. So I calculated all those dates and things, and then essentially converted all the strings and put it all together in one big old concatenated setup. So it's a way to kind of manipulate those values, kind of whatever you want to show here.
Yeah. And the good thing is as well, it's like I was sort of only limited to the sum the sum of the percentages at the bottom row. This actually, or dot column, this actually allows you to do it by row. So that's really, really helpful.
It does. And, something that I'm not sure a lot of people take advantage of, and I've recently been doing this far more, is that, say I have a formula field here, right? And yes, now I've changed it to a string. It may not be ideal. What you can do is you can make any number one of these, things here where I'm taking out, like, say, that format command. All I want is the number, right? But I'm keeping it a number in this case. Well, if you just want to keep this value, but you don't want to like clutter up your view, you just go hide it. You can still reference it, and so you can use that in tons of other formulas here, but not clutter up your main view. Yeah. And so it's like a hidden variable, which is super useful for lots of things. So it's one of those tricks where, like, as I've realized more and more that, hey, I want to store this value here or an intermediate value. Sometimes maybe doing 1,000 different, operations in a singular formula is it's prone to error. So, if you can break it down a bit more into different, formula, into different columns and use those properties to then calculate further down, well, then it makes it a lot easier to kind of look at. But yeah, it's one of those things where very useful trick.
Yeah, definitely.
So kind of the final thing I wanted to demonstrate here is a little, because dates are always something that comes up a lot. So a pretty simple example, but as I was struggling to come up with a way, you can make these really complicated, but at the same time, they don't always need to be. So I just want to track, hey, what's the days since I last paid a bill? And it's pretty easy to do, because really all I'm doing is just doing hey, what's the number of days between now and whatever my date field here is. And so, for example, what's pretty cool about this is all you're doing is using this handy little now feature, which is a built-in function to say, just get me the current date. Whatever the current date and time is, output that. And then comparing that to our bills last paid column here, just return me the days. And so, I get 10. Well, it's useful because you can then take that value and then you could say, if it's greater than 5, output a little fire emoji, or, something to say you need to do something.
Yeah, that's it.
But fantastic. Nothing too complicated.
No, these are all like gold examples, because like they're all like ways, like I'm going to steal the habits one for sure.
Go for it.
With the task point value. But I can see how people can use the day side of stuff. I know a lot of people are using chores, so being able to see a percentage is absolutely lovely. So, when I have kids, I'll use the homework one as well.
The thing is, when you have kids, and actually tracking anything becomes impossible.
I
want to make the check boxes, but make sure I actually watched all the homework.
That's it.
So I thought it's kind of a useful set to at least a way to track something that's relevant. People might be using.
Definitely, Adam. That was an absolute masterclass. I love that. Where can people find you after this call?
Sure. So, you can find me. I have a kind of a little bit about me at adamlistek.me. And also my consulting site, which is listekconsulting.com. And also I'm on Twitter at alistek. So,
Amazing.
yeah, as I said, I'm somewhat active, but mostly you'll find me on my formulas page. So hopefully, you get some use out of that.
I love it. And I had a final question for you.
Absolutely.
I'm just like wondering how you found Notion so early, because like that is like super early.
Well, and so I had to look back on emails and to actually see when I started using this. And I found in the first email I found was back in 2016, where it then said, "Hey, you've been using this for 9 months." And I'm like, man,
Wow.
when did I start using it? 9 months.
Yeah.
Back Product Hunt back in the day. I had to go look this up. They had September 2015 a Notion beta app out there, and I
Oh my goodness.
vaguely remember finding it and being like, "This is what I've been looking for ages."
Yeah.
I come to find out later on that was a point of turmoil and changeover, and they were just getting to the point of getting the product out, and I kind of dived into it, but they didn't really start getting it going until 2016 and on. So I really started using it in earnest around then. But yeah, apparently I've been a user for forever. So
Oh
I
my God. Yeah. You
didn't
must
quite
be in
realize
the,
it was that long. Yeah.
yeah, you must be like in the top like 100 probably or something like that. Cause
It was
yeah,
early.
it's
Yeah.
pretty
And so,
good. Wow.
and then I started just telling everyone like this product's awesome. And so for
Yeah.
for me, I like the free form and kind of doing whatever I want to be able to do. So it's worked great. I've been
Yeah.
very, very happy with it. Yeah.
Definitely. Well, I think the first thing I remember about using Notion was that you could drag stuff onto the page,
Yeah.
like the different like media and all that. That was so weird, but
Oh
now it's
yeah.
like a lot better the way you could do it. But
Well, the amount of times I just, paste in a screenshot and, move
yeah,
stuff around to make columns and stuff. Yeah, I've made some pretty elaborate setups that, better or for worse, probably not needed, but
yeah,
it's fun to
I
do.
bet.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Well, thanks so much for coming on, Adam. Honestly, I think you're going to be helping hundreds, maybe even thousands of people that are getting deep into formulas. So thank you.
Well, thank you. And thank you for having me. And hopefully it's helpful.
Oh, definitely, it will be. Thank you. I will see you soon. Yeah.
Yeah. Take care.
All right. Bye.